The Sermon on the Mount. Well, welcome to you. What I thought I'd do is give a personal interpretation of the Sermon on the Mount. And not only is it a personal interpretation, but it's a reinterpretation. I keep reinterpreting it, But this is a personal reinterpretation based on my Kejawen beliefs. Now, this is part of a new section to the magic of Java called The Real Magic of Java. In this new section, I'm going to focus on real people performing what they believe to be real magic in Java. I'll attempt to explain some of the elements of this Javanese magic, particularly what I describe as the Kejawen elements. However, I need to warn you that inevitably my explanations will be partial. Maybe sometimes some elements of what I say will be incorrect, for which I profusely apologise. But this reflects the oral tradition of magic in Java, the mystery, and at times, I have to admit, subterfuge surrounding the practice of magic in Java. Please accept my apologies, but I do hope you enjoy this new section. Now, I was going to begin this by explaining how I'd grown up in the liberal Anglo-Catholic tradition, and that the Sermon of the Mount had always been fundamental to my beliefs, even though I lost my way many times. But I realised that it dates back even further than that, because I grew up in Shropshire, originally in Shrewsbury and always in and around Shrewsbury. And one of the main roads leading out of Shrewsbury is called the Mount. And now I think about it, as a child in Sunday school, when I was taught the Sermon on the Mount, I always believed it was referring to that road in Shrewsbury. And maybe that's not such a bad thing. Maybe I should reflect on that a little bit more. Now, the Sermon on the Mount has always fundamentally influenced me, but I think it also, well, I know it did, influence the English Romantics. And to me, the English Romantics have always been so important, but they always seem to intertwine with the Sermon on the Mount. Of course, since moving to Indonesia, I found my faith again in Islam. But I find the Sermon on the Mount very important to me once more. And I'd argue, especially in these troubled times. Now, Jesus, or Isa, as we Muslims call him, is an important prophet within Islam. That might come as a surprise to some of you, but he is an important prophet. We do see him as a prophet, we don't deify him, but, that's, to be honest, I couldn't be bothered arguing with that sort of thing. But also what will probably surprise you is the Bible, along with the Book of Psalms, are holy books to us. As interestingly is the Torah, which Jesus says that he's here to fulfill in the Sermon on the Mount. Now, something that you will hear Muslims say, and I think there's a degree of truth in it, and that is they will say that God or Allah gave the Torah to the Jews and gave them Abraham, and they ignored what he was saying. So they then sent Isa, Jesus, and again, the Christians, to a degree, turned their back on what Jesus was saying. And I think at the heart of that is the Sermon on the Mount, because no more so than any of Jesus' teachings, the Sermon on the Mount is the one that I think Christians have struggled the most to implement. So then he claimed that, then the claim is that he then sent Muhammad, and Muhammad came and he said, right, you've not understood what I was saying through Ibrahim, you've not understood what I was saying through Isa, so now we're going to make it simple. You know, you pray 5 times a day, etc., etc. I think that's just a story, but it does illustrate the importance of Judaism and Christianity to us Muslims. Now, whenever I express views, such views, I seem to offend evangelical Christians, especially when they find out that I celebrate the life of Jesus. And they attempt to trip me into theological arguments, trip me up in theological arguments. And again, you know, I have to say, I don't care. You know, I don't care about these theological arguments that so-and-so said this and so-and-so said that. And then you know that it's getting really, really silly when they start quoting from the Bible or Al-Quran, because it's always selectively quoting and it's always, you know, somewhat misunderstood and, you know, just to prove their points. I mean, I suppose, let's be clear about this. What I'm going to do now is my interpretation of the Sermon on the Mount. And I know it is. It's my interpretation. It's not somebody else's. And it's about the path that I've chosen. It's my path. Now, I don't put people down for being on other paths. You know, this is my path. It's the path I've chosen. It's the path that suits me. It may change, you know, or I may stray from it and find another path. But it doesn't matter. None of these things matter. And I think that's the point. Of course, as a Kejawen, there's no conflict in holding these beliefs. You know, we don't, you know, we embrace all religions, you know, including what the evangelists believe of polytheistic religions. But they're not. They're not. Most religions, almost all religions, are really monotheistic. It's just a misunderstanding. Well, it's not even a misunderstanding. It's wanting to have a go at other people's religions, isn't it, frankly? But as a result of being Kejawen, I've actually discovered some more mystical interpretations to the Sermon on the Mount. And I just feel now is the time to share them with you. So that's what I'm doing. So we'll start off with what are known as the Beatitudes. That's the blessed are the lines from the Sermon on the Mount. And the first of those is, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. I just wonder, is this about the closer we come to God, the more we understand our own deficiencies? That the closer we get to God, which we should all aspire to, that we begin to understand how little we know. As Muslims, you may know, we don't depict God, and certainly not as a sort of an old man with a beard. And that's because God is everywhere, is everything, he's unknowable, unfathomable, etc., etc. And I think maybe that's what this is getting at. However, there's an alternative in Luke. Almost everything I'm going to talk about comes from Matthew. But in Luke 6.20, it simply says, blessed are the poor. Now, this does make much more sense to me. My own experience in business, that it's hard to be successful without cutting some corners. And, you know, if you sit businessmen down and ask them about their success, and really probe and they're being honest, most will admit to that. So it makes more sense that blessed are the poor, really. Indeed, I've got some experience of economic development, and I know that within economic development there's always winners and losers. And now I'm not necessarily saying it's a zero-sum game, although I think it could be if we add the environment to it. So, there's always this argument in economic development that economic development makes the cake bigger, therefore it's about making things better for everybody, which I'm not going to argue with it here, but I'm saying if you throw the environment and other things in, maybe it is a zero-sum game. But what I would say is that if an economic system favours the rich, and which one doesn't, then so does economic development. And it should be apparent right now that every change within the economy, whether it be a crisis or growth, whatever it is, always redistributes wealth from the poor to the rich, despite people going at great lengths to convince us the opposite. So we're always sold economic development as being about redistributing the wealth from the rich to the poor, but it's impossible because the economic system doesn't allow that. It always favours the rich. And the next beatitude is, blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Now, I'm wondering if this is about that we shouldn't mourn for those who have brought on themselves bad karma. Not saying that we shouldn't help and comfort wrongdoers, but we see karma as inevitable. We can try and break the karma, but we do need to understand that this is how the universe works. It needs to get back into balance, and that's what karma is all about. So what I think is we should not try and understand the darkness of the world and the darkness of others and what is driving them, but use our own light to show them another path. Now, I wonder, things that have been on my mind for some time now, I wonder if we could relate this to how we deal with psychopaths and narcissists. The reason I feel this way is I really do believe that my mission here on earth is to find a way that we should deal sympathetically with psychopaths and narcissists. But I've got to say that I've not come very far in resolving this at all. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Was this the one that in Monty Python they said, blessed are the Greeks? Could be. Because certainly the Greeks interpreted meek to mean mild or gentle. So I think at a time like this, it's reminding us not to force our view of the world on others, not to force our will on others or our views on others. Indeed, that's my definition of black magic. So you could extrapolate that further and say, well, what does that tell us about the media, science, politics and business? And I'm coming to the conclusion that everything in society is a hegemony to take us away from living as God intended us to. Maybe we should also ask, what is the kingdom of heaven? Because if I hold a view, and some Kejawens hold a view that's almost identical to Swedenborg's, mine is not unlike, that what we build, it's what we build on what we call earth. So heaven and hell are constructs on this earth. Now, we can't actually have a kingdom of God in which everyone is in this heaven until everyone has accepted these Beatitudes. So that's the importance, that we need to find a way to live, to incorporate psychopaths and narcissists within our world. So the kingdom of God is about I think it is about creating heaven on earth. But it's not creating a heaven that's an exclusive club. You know, the idea you can't come in, you're going down there. Because until we've managed to get everybody in, then we won't have achieved it. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Thirst for righteousness suggests that if we seek God's light, we will be given it. And that's certainly my experience. So by increasing our vibration, we help to increase that in others and become a vessel for God's love. Indeed, we help to increase the vibration of the universe. Now, God gave us abundance. He gave us plenty, but we hoard this abundance. However, if we simply accepted his blessings, then times of abundance, there would be times when the abundance would be less apparent, possibly. And maybe we'd be forced to eat that which doesn't please us. Maybe even we'd be forced to fast. So I just wonder if this isn't related also to fasting. Because through fasting we receive blessings from God. And by removing ourselves from our physical desires, we are blessed with a more spiritual understanding. So fasting is very important to us in Kejawen. And we do develop a greater understanding as a result of fasting. So I wonder if it's also referring to that. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Now, my experience as a victim of black magic shows me that mercy and forgiveness are the only way to defeat it. So it's the exact opposite as your immediate reaction to fighting black magic is that you've got to use black magic against black magic. But it isn't. You defeat it through love. You defeat it by mercy. You defeat it by forgiving your enemies. You defeat it by asking God to bless your enemies. But could this be taken further? Is it about finding mercy for psychopaths and narcissists? Now, I've also contemplated, if not the vast majority of black magic at least, is conducted by psychopaths and narcissists. Indeed, I would argue that just like business, politics, and indeed church leadership is very attractive to psychopaths and narcissists, so is black magic. So is magic in general. So you do find an awful lot of magicians are psychopaths and narcissists, and I would argue that they form those who practice black magic. But I've come to the conclusion that maybe these people are actually avatars. You could call them meat golem, or Steiner. Steiner calls them moral automata. And these are people who've given away their free will to the will of others. Now, if they've done that, now of course they've had the free will to give away their free will, but nevertheless it's probably been difficult. So don't hate them. Show mercy to them, while still understanding there will be karma to be faced. Indeed, as I've indicated before, until we can resolve these conflicts, we cannot find the light of God. Nor indeed, until we resolve these sorts of conflicts, can we heal ourselves and love ourselves. So until we've understood, that's too strong. Until we've shown mercy to others, until we've forgiven others, we can't heal ourselves and love ourselves, and therefore we cannot accept God's light. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. As I say, to be blessed with God's light, we need to heal ourselves. We need to explore and understand the dark forces that have shaped us and love the inner child within us once more. Now, this sort of somewhat goes against the Western and Christian tradition. But I often talk about my daily jihad, and that's a daily jihad between good and bad. Now, we have to understand our own darkness to find our own light. And I think that's what this is about. So we need to understand our own darkness, where it has come from, how it shaped us, find our inner child, and forgive everything. Forgive everything. And then we will definitely be blessed by the light. So once we've got this light, our interactions are shaped by love and bliss. And we're not attempting any longer to enforce our will on others or seek retribution. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the children of God. So this definitely was misinterpreted as the cheesemakers, wasn't it? Now, you could see this as about being pacifism. But I think it's about actually seeking peace. So to seek peace, we need to take the role of the mediator. And that involves suppressing our ego, seeing peace and not us scoring points or us being right as the ultimate goal. Finding and taking the middle ground. Because our views, our individual views, and beliefs indeed, are less important than reaching a consensus. Thinking again of psychopaths and narcissists, it's not about accepting their hegemony, but finding a way to incorporate them within our world. So finding the path of peace, the middle ground. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Tolerance and acceptance of others. We all have our own paths, to which we hold true, even though we may seek peace and the middle ground. We have a duty to speak our truth, but critically, never to impose it. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is the reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Again, this is about holding to your truth in the face of adversity. Something which I would argue is being severely challenged at the moment. But it also reminds us not to engage in gossip and spreading untruths about others. And again, this may be a reference to the way that psychopaths and narcissists work. For they have destroyed truth in our world. And we are being seduced that image is more important than truth. Whereas this is telling us we need to hold on to our truth. Well, I really hope you've enjoyed this. Because these are real events, I can't say how regularly I'm going to be adding to this subsection. Because I don't know how often they're going to occur. But I would imagine that they'll be at least every couple of months, maybe monthly. Now, if you'd like to know when that's going to be, please subscribe and hit the button, and you'll get information on when new ones are released. I'd love you to make comments and ask questions, and if you do, I'll attempt to answer them as honestly as I can. I promise you that there's no attempt on this channel or this part of this channel of me. There'll be no attempt by me at any type of subterfuge. I'll try to be as honest and open as I possibly can be. Inevitably, there will be some of you who disagree with my interpretation, and we can agree to disagree. But what you're seeing is real stuff here. What I'd love you to do, if you enjoyed this, is look at my other sections. Particularly, I've written novels about magic in Java, and they contain much more information in them, especially me trying to understand the theories of magic, the psychology of it, and I try and intersperse them with a sort of spiritual dimension. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and God bless you.